I had always believed that small gestures could mean the world. That day, I decided to buy him a tie, a simple gift to show I cared. I chose it carefully, imagining how it would complement his suits and perhaps make him smile. It was a sunny afternoon, and I felt lighthearted as I walked to his office, clutching the neatly wrapped package. I pictured the moment I handed it to him, the warmth of a smile, maybe even a brief moment of connection. I never imagined what I would walk into. As I opened the office door, a chill ran down my spine. The room, which I knew so well, suddenly felt unfamiliar and hostile. My heart nearly stopped. There, on his desk, was my sister. Naked, completely exposed. Her presence, brazen and unapologetic, left me frozen in place. My mind scrambled for words, for an explanation, for some way to convince myself that what I was seeing wasn't real. But reality was relentless. She was there, sitting as if she owned the space, the air thick with tension and audacity. I stepped closer, my gift clutched in my hands like a shield. I wanted to speak, to demand answers, to assert some control over the surreal scene. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, a whirlwind of emotions surged through me, shock, disbelief, anger, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. I felt my chest tighten as I struggled to process the scene before me. My sister, the one person I thought I could trust, was standing on the threshold of my world, tearing apart every expectation I had ever held. He looked up, startled but not alarmed, as though this was routine, as though nothing was wrong. I realized then that I had walked into a private world that wasn't mine, one that had been hidden in plain sight. I felt like an intruder, yet the sense of betrayal was far deeper than mere intrusion. The trust I had placed in them, the innocence I had carried, seemed to crumble in an instant. I felt the weight of years of secrecy pressing down on me, suffocating in its intensity. I finally found my voice, 5 words that spilled out before I could stop them: "This stops. Right, here, now." The simplicity of my words belied the storm they unleashed. Silence followed, thick and heavy, as the reality of my declaration settled over the room. My sister's expression faltered for a brief moment, a flicker of guilt or shock passing across her face. He, however, maintained his composure, though I could see the tension in his shoulders, the realization that the balance had shifted. Those 5 words carried a weight I could not have anticipated. They were an ultimatum, a line drawn in the sand. They were meant to assert my boundary, to reclaim control in a situation that had spun wildly out of it. And yet, they also had a ripple effect far beyond the office. Within hours, what I thought was a private confrontation became public knowledge. Someone had captured a glimpse, or perhaps rumors had a life of their own, and suddenly the scene, the words, and the tension were broadcast across headlines. I watched in disbelief as the news spread. Friends, colleagues, even strangers began to discuss the incident, dissecting every detail, analyzing motives, and speculating about the relationships involved. The world, which had seemed so contained and private, suddenly expanded into a theater of judgment and scrutiny. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and yet strangely empowered. My words, brief as they were, had created a boundary that others could not cross. They had also created a story that demanded attention, forcing truth into the open. As the hours passed, I grappled with the reality of what had happened. My sister avoided my gaze, her usual bravado diminished by the confrontation. He offered explanations that fell flat, excuses that could not undo the shock, the betrayal, or the public spectacle, and through it all, I held on to the clarity of my stance. I would not be complicit. I would not allow deceit or manipulation to define my relationships. The gift I had brought, once a symbol of affection, had transformed into a marker of confrontation, a testament to my courage to speak out. By nightfall, the office was empty, and I was left alone with my thoughts. The gift lay untouched, a reminder of the innocence I had carried and the reality I had faced. I realized that life had a way of testing boundaries, of exposing hidden truths when we least expect it. The incident, shocking and chaotic as it was, had also clarified my priorities, my values, and my resolve. I had found a voice in the moment of betrayal, a voice that could not be ignored, and in doing so, I reclaimed a sense of self-respect that had been threatened. In the days that followed, the headlines continued to circulate, but their significance felt secondary to the clarity I had gained. The confrontation had been necessary, and the words I had spoken had drawn a line that could not be crossed. I learned that gifts, intentions, and expectations are fragile, easily shattered by hidden truths. But so too is courage, and in that moment, I discovered the power of standing firm, even when the world seemed to tilt in chaos. The moment I spoke, the room fell into an eerie silence, thick and suffocating. My 5 words, "This stops. Right, here, now," echoed off the walls and seemed to hang in the air longer than I intended. It was as though time itself paused to acknowledge the gravity of what had just been revealed. My sister, naked on his desk, froze mid-motion, her expression flickering between shock, embarrassment, and defiance. He, on the other hand, attempted to maintain his composure, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. I felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration as I realized that those words had done more than stop the immediate chaos, they had ignited a chain reaction that none of us could have predicted. Within hours, the incident had taken on a life of its own. Word spread like wildfire, fueled by whispers, social media posts, and curious colleagues who had caught fragments of the story. Someone had taken a photo, or perhaps multiple photos, and suddenly what had been a private confrontation was now a spectacle. Headlines began to appear online, each one more sensational than the last, dissecting every detail of the scandal. My name, my sister's, and his were all splashed across the news, and I felt a mixture of horror and disbelief at how quickly the world outside had descended into chaos. The attention was overwhelming. Messages flooded my phone, some sympathetic, others cruel, and many probing for details I wasn't ready to share. Friends and family reached out, trying to understand what had happened, offering support or judgment in equal measure. The media seemed to thrive on the story, spinning theories about motives, relationships, and betrayals. Every time I scrolled through social media, there it was, my confrontation, immortalized in screenshots, comments, and endless speculation. The private moment I had lived through had been transformed into public property, and I was forced to navigate a world that seemed determined to define me by a single incident. Amid the chaos, I realized I had to reclaim control. The headlines were out of my hands, but my actions moving forward were not. I took a deep breath and began to decide how I would respond. Silence was not an option, my boundaries and integrity needed to be clear. I crafted statements, reached out to trusted contacts, and sought ways to clarify the truth without feeding the sensationalism. Every word I spoke, every decision I made, felt like a careful dance between protecting myself and ensuring the situation didn't spiral further. It was exhausting, but necessary. Meanwhile, the fallout with my sister and him was immediate and intense. She avoided my gaze, retreating behind a wall of defensiveness and shame. He attempted explanations that rang hollow, excuses that did little to repair the damage or restore trust. Conversations were tense, filled with unspoken accusations and regret. Family dynamics, already complicated, shifted drastically. Trust had been broken in ways that could not be easily repaired, and the ripple effects were felt in every interaction. I realized that the scandal, while public, also exposed private truths that demanded reckoning. As the days turned into weeks, I learned to navigate the new reality. The initial shock faded, replaced by a sobering awareness of the power of words, boundaries, and consequences. My 5 words had not only stopped the immediate betrayal but had also set in motion a transformation in my life. Relationships would never be the same, some doors had closed, others were opening in unexpected ways. I found solace in the clarity of my own values and the knowledge that I had acted with integrity, even when faced with extreme provocation. The public reaction, while often sensationalized, also revealed something profound. Strangers reached out with empathy, sharing similar experiences, offering encouragement, and validating my response. The scandal, in a strange way, became a source of connection, a reminder that courage and honesty resonate even in the face of chaos. I began to see that while the headlines were temporary, the impact of my actions, the assertion of my boundaries and refusal to accept betrayal, would have a lasting effect on how I lived my life. Through it all, I also learned the limits of forgiveness. While I wanted to believe in second chances, the betrayal was deep, and the consequences were real. I had to decide which relationships were worth salvaging and which had crossed lines that could not be uncrossed. It was painful, but necessary. The scandal forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about trust, loyalty, and the importance of standing firm, even when the world seemed to turn against me. By the end of it, I had changed. The headlines may have faded, the social media frenzy subsided, but the experience left an indelible mark. I had learned the power of speaking up, of refusing to be complicit, and of asserting boundaries with clarity and courage. My life, once predictable and safe, had been thrown into chaos, but from that chaos emerged a resilience I had not known I possessed. I understood, Finally, that true strength is not measured by how we avoid crises, but by how we confront them, speak our truth, and reclaim our dignity. And as I looked back on that fateful day, the gift I had brought, the betrayal I had witnessed, and the words I had spoken, I realized something important. Courage is often quiet, but its echoes can reach far beyond the walls in which it begins. My 5 words had sparked chaos, yes, but they had also sparked change, and in the end, that change was mine to own.